project management. Thank you all. Project management, I do a little wetland stuff here or there, but like my primary focus is working with lake groups and lake residents, on protecting and restoring lake shores and protecting water quality. So, today, I thought I'd put on a little bit of a workshop, with the main focus so my idea here tonight, and I'll talk a little bit about this later, but I want you guys to take home information tonight where you can go back to your place, stand in your yard and be like, oh, that's a resource concern. Or look at that over there, a little bit of erosion, or look at my shoreline, this could be fixed. Because not everybody knows, and heck, my parents just bought a place and I went there, I'm like, oh my gosh, look at that huge gully there. And Dad's like, oh yeah, what are you talking about? So being able to understand what's going on in your property is going to be important. So we'll first talk a little bit about stormwater and how it relates to water quality. Like I just said, knowing your lake property, do I have a resource concern? Can you guys go back and check it out and say, yes, I identify that. Then we'll talk about solutions. So when you see that resource concern, maybe like an eroding shoreline or some hillside erosion, you can kind of have a little bit of an idea of what can fix that issue. And then the next steps. What do you do? Basically, give me a call, but yeah. Workshop goals. So you don't come here and just listen and not understand and not know what the goal of it is. Do I have a resource concern on my property? Just said that. I basically just said all that. Knowing what to do with that resource concern, next steps, and being motivated. So I want you guys to be like, all right, I learned something. This is cool. This is all just what I want. I don't know if it's going to happen, but this is what I would like. To be motivated, go out, do something, take steps to help protect the lake because it's important. And I appreciate everybody here because it's an important thing to do. We want to keep our lakes clean and safe and for a long time. So my little kiddos can go and ski and swim and not get all gross and like fish. And, yeah. So stormwater as it relates to surface water quality. So basically when it rains, that water that flows over land and it does not infiltrate and it's not captured by something, it's not held onto the land, reaches the surface water. Does that make sense? Pretty basic. So here's some of the effects of stormwater. So like, why do we care? We do care. That stormwater can carry sediment, nutrients to the lake or surface water stream. This runoff can create algae blooms. So with that nutrient that goes into the lake, 1 pound of phosphorus can potentially create 500 pounds of wet algae. It also can negatively affect your aquatic habitats. All that sediment that's washing into the lake can mess with where the fish are hanging out. The more sediment you get can raise lake temperatures, which is not good for aquatic life. Nutrient can build up on the bottom of the lake. So especially in deep water lakes, the more of that phosphorus that comes in, settles to the ground or settles to the lake bottom. It kind of just sits there, and especially during the summer when it stratifies, all that nutrient sits at the bottom. And then, and you guys probably noticed this in the fall time, there's a time where things switch and it flips, right? And so the whole water column's one thing and all that phosphorus from the bottom comes to the top and kind of get more of a green look around fall time. Promotes nuisance plant growth. So your aquatic invasive species love nutrient-rich water. So they thrive off it. They love eating it stuff and they grow big and they grow everywhere. Coontail, it's not aquatic invasive, but it's kind of a pain in the butt. I mean, it is native, but it loves like nutrient-rich water. So whenever I see a lot of that, you have high phosphorus for the most part. Property damage. So like I was saying, during these big rainfalls, if you have like concentrated stream flows on your property, so where you can go out and look and see there's like actual rivers going down your hillside or somewhere where there's a bunch of concentrated flow. I mean, it can erode, and then once it gets to your shoreline, you can see where it's eroding and your bank starts to erode. So the property damage. And it can make playing in the lake, it's a bummer. And actually, not sure if I cited that. I got that straight from like the Scientific magazine, but I didn't cite it, so don't tell anybody. That's not true. I didn't. I made that.
Is quick question, is phosphorus the main concern, or is nitrogen and potassium also a concern, like from fertilizer?
Okay. Chris, thank you. So phosphorus is the soil and water's main concern. I mean, there's always issues, right? But a lot of our funding is focused on reducing total phosphorus from surface water. So yes, nitrates and other nutrients could be an issue, but that total phosphorus really has an impact on your water quality. MPCA has standards in which, if it's too high, you do not meet those water quality standards. So not to like discredit any other bad nutrient that's going into the lake, but for this scenario, total phosphorus is our main concern.
Thank you.
No problemo. All right. So resource concerns. So this is where, once we start going through these are where I want you to look and be like, oh, is that something I have on my property? And then kind of take this information home when you go. So I took this picture on Green Lake the other day. Joe, that's not Green Lake.
That's your house, right?
Yes, yeah, right. Yeah, right. We'd have this at if that was my house, we'd all be there right now. And I would not be preaching or doing what I preach if that was the case. So impervious surface. So impervious surface is a resource concern, and it's not awful, but when you go and you see areas on your property where rain can't go through, right, to the ground. I always talk about like before your house was ever there, it was just an open field or it was woods, and when the rain fell, it could settle and it could most likely filter through the ground depending on how big the rain it was, depending on the slope. But for the most part, that rainwater, stormwater went into the ground and filtered before it reached the lake. Now with homes, you have your roof, you have your garage, you have your patio, maybe a sidewalk, driveway, all these things where when it rains, instead of it going into the ground, it eventually moves somewhere to where it does hit the ground, and the quantity of that is much more. So it's harder for it to filter into the sand or into the ground, and then it goes into the lake. So impervious surface is something that, you could take a look at. Where on my property do I have a lot of impervious surface, and where does that rain go? And then how can I address that? Talk about that in a minute. So here's a good picture. Actually on a lake in the county. So we did projects here. A lot of impervious surface. Look at that. Big garage or big home, driveway, dead end coming to the driveway. But what the landowner did is they planted, like, I think it was like a 15 or 20-foot buffer at the shore there, where previously it was just mowed up to the edge. So all that water, when it rained, it hit that driveway. And I mean, there's a ton of rain coming off that driveway. And you can't tell from this, but this is sloped. It's a little bit of a hill. So it hit that hill and it washed right down. And I mean, even with sand, stormwater can filter on hillsides, but I mean, a slope, it's not going to filter very much, right? Because it's still going. It's not like sitting there. So yeah, we planted like 15, 20-foot buffer here to capture some of that runoff, capture that nutrient, capture that sediment, protect the lake. So slopes, if you live on a slope, like I was just saying, right? And this is, it's not, when I'm pointing out these resource concerns, just like make it clear, it's like no one's fault. I mean, this is just where you are, and this is, just check it out and you address it. So like living on a hillside, when it rains, that water on that hillside, it's not going to the ground. It's just going straight down. And then when you have a real short distance between that toe or where that hill ends, right, and the lake, there's not a lot of space for it to filter, especially if you have that, if it's just mowed grass and taller native plants, big buffers can slow that stuff down. Yeah,
Is there? Like a formula that works good for, say you got a slope like this and you have a flat spot, is there some kind of formula to know how big of a buffer you need?
yeah, I do not know that. So,
Okay,
I mean, I don't know the formula. I have computer models that people a lot smarter than me have put together for me to use, that I could put all this information into this computer model and it will spit that out. So, right, based on that slope, it'll say, oh man, I can even put in there a 15-foot buffer with this slope behind it, and it'll say it's only gonna hold 50% of what's coming down that hill. And I'll put like, oh, I want a buffer that's 50 feet with that same slope, and be like, okay, now that you have 50 feet, it's gonna capture 90% of that runoff coming there. So it's out there, we have it, right? Manicured lawns, again, I'm gonna bring up my parents. Dad loves to mow his lawn right to that lake shore, and I'm just sitting there, you know, and that it just doesn't give a buffer to slow things down. Looks cool. I mean, a lot of people like it, but it's just not. It's not something that protects somebody, I guess. Here's another thing. So driveways, sidewalks. I don't think a lot. I've been around the lakes. I don't think a lot of people have these chutes. That's on Speck Lake. And so when you go back to your property, if anything like this, these are all sloped. It's not like cement, but I mean, it's so packed down, it's impervious, right? Water's not going down there. And that's almost worse than a driveway because it's all sediment. So it's carrying that sediment down, rather than just cement where there's, you know, not as much dirt and sediment on top of it. But this is another great example of a resource concern that you can identify. We did a project on this one right here, and I'll show you that. Like I said, this is on Speck Lake. We did a project here too that I'll go over. My assumption is like back whenever that was put in, it was for good intentions, right? Because they put in their driveway, they put in their home, and you know, they saw that this is where all that water went and it started making a gully. And they're like, oh, well, let's just put in a chute. But, you know, makes sense because you're not losing all that hillside. But at the same time, you know, you've just created a path straight to the lake. We'll talk about what we did there, which is pretty cool. Hillside erosion. So gullies or any bare soil. You know, how can you address that? This is on Blue Lake. We did a project here. These are the same spots. This is the boat access on Blue Lake. Right here. Like 3-4 years ago, we installed a project there. And that is just a landowner's home that we did a project down a few years ago too. Can't remember where that's at. So again, everybody just be aware. If you see this on your shoreline, it's something that can be fixed and it's something we can help with. So then you look at your shoreline. We have your shoreline erosion. When you're looking at your shoreline, when I go out, right, and I do surveys for around the lake and look at shores, and we like prioritize like the shoreline based on these criteria. So, you know, like vertical banks, like house, like here's a vertical bank. It's like, this is like 4 feet high, right? Or any bare soil, again, bare soil there, bare soil there. Maintain lawns, and I kind of showed you that before. These are all criteria that we're looking at for resource concerns. And undercutting. So I'm sure a lot of you guys seen this. I know on Blue Lake it does. I'm not sure on Speck or on Green Lake a little bit. I've seen it, but basically, like you could put like a 2-3 foot stick under there and, you know, hit the bottom. So I mean, it doesn't look like you're getting a lot of, soil loss and shore loss up here, but when it's cutting underneath, eventually it'll start sinking down. So that's, again, another resource concern. Help with. Oh, I just like this picture. Talk about shoreline restorations, right? So where that person's standing, that's where they've done like a native plant buffer with those deep rooted native plants, hold and stabilize the soils. And the neighbors, not so much. They like to, you know, just manicure, mow their lawn. So native plants have deep roots. We're talking like feet. I thought it was the next slide. I thought I was gonna be really prepared for that one. No, but so native plants have super deep roots, 2, 3, 4 feet, depending on the landscape you're at. Your turf grass roots are basically as deep as the blade. So there's like no structure there to hold the soils. So when you're getting that runoff, that better, or the wave action too, you know, there's not any protection. Here's another good example, a little different. They have rocks, so they have it is protected, right? A little bit at the shoreline for wave action, but what it's not doing, it is not capturing that runoff and nutrient that's coming from up in the watershed. And like the rock has no filtering components, so it just comes and goes right into the lake. I mean, good for them for protecting the shoreline, but you're missing those other benefits of filtration and habitat improvement, pollinator habitat, things like that. This is the same person. It's on Green Lake. This is another example of erosion at the shoreline, exposed tree roots. These are all things that, you know, could potentially be addressed on your shoreline to help protect water quality. All right, addressing the issue. So we're kind of moved on from identifying what's going on a lakeshore, and now we're going to look at how could we potentially fix these issues. So shoreline restoration. So we use shoreline restorations when we have shoreline erosion issues. So shoreline restorations, we use native plants. So soil and water. Soil and water uses native plants. We use mulch, blanket, with what's called willow bundles. They're right down here, right at the toe. So soil and water really likes to focus on bioengineering. As much as we can stay away from hard armor, right? Rock, bricks, walls, things like that. As much as we can, right? A lot of the majority of the lakes in Isanti will respond well to bioengineering. There's really good bioengineering techniques that can protect. You don't always have to, you know, straight to that hard armor via rock or brick or whatever. For multiple reasons. You know, it looks natural. We're trying to restore, so restore back to what pre-altered. We're trying to create habitat, and we're trying to, you know, capture that nutrient coming off the lake. So the rock and brick and stuff, hard armor really doesn't have that component. It does protect the shoreline, I'm not gonna lie, right? With the wave action and stuff, it does have its benefits, but soil and water likes to, as much as we can, focus on that bioengineering component. What's up?
Could you put the riprap down flush, put
Yes.
the native plants, you know, next to it, so it soak up the water?
100%. And I guess when I say this stuff, like for the bioengineering part and the hard armor, I'm really kind of focusing or talking more about like where we come in for cost share, right? Because we do have funding to help with these projects. And when I say the rock and the hard armor, heck yes. So the landowner could be like, a landowner could have rock on their shoreline and they could come up to us and be like, you know, we want to put in a buffer. Totally willing to help. Sounds awesome. You know, find some cost share dollars to help, you know, put in that project, pay for that project. But we wouldn't, in most cases, if a landowner said, you know, I have an eroding shoreline and I want a buffer. Our first option would not be like, okay, we'll come and pay for that rock and pay for some of that buffer. You know, our option would be like, hey, let's look at some of these other bioengineering techniques before we jump to the rock. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so shoreline restorations, native plants, mulch, blanket, willow. We can use core logs. In some cases, we use soil wraps with big heavy duty blanket and soil where you can wrap around and plant vegetation into it. We do assistance, we come out, we help. Even if it's not something that we could help with in terms of funding, we're always there for technical assistance, that's what we do. We'll help you out, point you in the right direction. Permitting with these projects, sometimes, it all depends. Once you hit that OHW, so there's your acronym for the night, OHW, ordinary high water mark. And the DNR, anything below that OHW is DNR. So once you start doing work below that OHW, they want their permits, which I get, that's their deal. So they want to know what you're doing, make sure you're doing it right. Other permitting might be through the zoning office, grading and filling permits. Once you start moving dirt a little bit or bringing dirt in to do stuff, they require permits. You could hire contractors, or when you work with us, we can hire contractors, or a lot of these things are DIY. Good. DIY. Who did that? Jeepers. So here is just kind of an example of a buffer that we did. So I went out on site. After they called me and went on site, I kind of just do like a site assessment. And this is kind of like what would be awesome if you guys did after this. So you go out, you walk around, come down by the shoreline. I see, my first thing I look at is like, oh, wow. We got a kind of a road that goes down to the shoreline. They say they take the 4-wheeler down there, bring their snacks, bring their kids down to the shore when they're having fires. And then over here, same thing. This is adjacent, kind of a steeper hill. Up on the top of that hill is the roof, and the roof had no gutters on it. So when it rained, it just kind of just washed down there. And what they wanted to do right here at the shoreline, they said they wanted something to protect it. They wanted to protect the shoreline from the wave action coming from the lake, and they wanted to capture some of that runoff coming from the hillside and coming off this gravel driveway. So what we did is we installed I think it's 15-foot buffer from the shoreline back. Not very wide, but this was basically their shoreline from dock to dock. And that shoreline buffer captured that runoff and sediment coming into the lake. So 1.5 pounds per phosphorus a year annually that this buffer captured. And if you remember, 1 pound of phosphorus could potentially produce 500 pounds of that wet algae. So good project. Can't remember how much it was, like 11,000. But again, no, I know. So that's where, hold on. We do provide, this is where we provide that funding, 75% cost share. So we can provide 75% of that total cost. In some cases, we can work out where the landowner does some of the planting work that can go towards, I shouldn't have said how much it was. Now people are like, this is ridiculous. Why are we here? Yeah. So at the end, we make it work. Ah, there it is. And look at that. This is the native plant page that I was talking about. These deep roots, right? And these are the plants that we plant on these shoreline buffers. Reason we use them is mainly to stabilize the soil. That soil structure, these roots hold that soil in place, protects against wave action, protects against, runoff.
Look at the turf grass.
Right. Mark, yeah, right. So that's your turf grass. There's nothing there.
So that's the turf grass. On the very far side is buffalo grass, which is a native grass. Do you know anything about that? I know that it likes Minnesota weather, it likes dry, hot summers. I was thinking about trying to replace my turf grass with buffalo grass. But I don't think you can, like turf grass, they can cut it and roll it up because it doesn't have any roots. But you can't do that with buffalo grass. So I assume you'd have to like kill all the turf grass and then you have to do it by seed. Did you know anything about it?
No, I bet you Minnesota Native or like Prairie Restorations would know a ton about that. You're probably right though. You'd have to, do some site maintenance.
It doesn't like shade and it doesn't like moisture. It likes dry, sunny spots.
Dry,
Which is Minnesota in the summer.
dry, sunny, sandy soils. Anybody have sandy soils?
I mean, look at the root structure difference between the buffalo grass and the turf grass. It's just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, what? Do that, let me know how that goes.
Yeah.
I know, cause Minnesota Native Landscape has like, and I don't know if it's a pollinator, but Blue Thumb has long lawns to legumes. Like it's a program that helps, convert your lawn to something that's pollinator friendly. And then Minnesota Native Landscape, Prairie Restoration and Prairie Moon, they have certain seed mixes that you can plant instead of your turf grass, things you don't have to mow all the time. Clover, things like that, that are pollinator friendly, don't have to mow, especially on those hillsides. I don't like mowing anyway, let alone on the hillside. These are those willow bundles. Where you at on this? Somewhere in here. These are the willow bundles that we use to protect the shoreline. So these willow bundles are big, long willow sticks, long skinny willows, right? Sandbar willow. Cut up a bunch of them. You make a log basically, and you wrap twine around in a rope. And then, so you have this big giant log, bunch of, bundle of sticks, right? Put it in the shoreline, and then you can take 2x4s that are cut to like a steak, big like this, nail them in, and then tie a rope around them, pull that rope tight, and stick them into the shoreline. I did not do a very good demonstration there, but we do have demonstration dates, so you can come on out and we could show you. And if you want to see one, I'm sure a lot of the landowners that have done projects with willows would love to have me out with whoever wants to check it out. So we can always do that.
You replace that every year or does that decay or how does that work?
Yeah, okay, so that's a good question. Who asked that? Mr. Hill? Is that him again?
Yeah, that was me again. Thanks. Sorry for all the questions.
No, I was gonna say, love the questions. Yes, so it's all biodegradable and it's all gonna depend on the situation, right? So if you have a lake shore that, it fluctuates, comes up, comes down, wet's dry, it's going to degrade faster. But the whole purpose of that, of the willows is to protect the plants that you planted behind it from those waves. Because those plants, again, really looking to get those plants established. And as time goes on, with the wave action on top of the willow, kind of starts capturing sediment, some of that sediment that's coming from the lake, some of that stuff that might make it from the shoreline or going to the lake, and you almost create like a media for those plants to grow in. It almost comes part of your shore a little bit. It's not like shoreline where you're gonna be able to like walk on it, hang out, but it's gonna eventually, it's gonna create structure. But you're correct, it will biodegrade. The goal is to just allow those plants behind it to establish enough to protect the shoreline. That makes sense?
Would you have to replace it?
No. Well, I mean, I know some people like continue to do it.
I mean, after 5 years, if it's eroded, you have to replace it or the plants just are, oh,
Okay, yeah, so after like, let's say 5 years. And everything has stayed in place, during that 5 years. Those native plants that have been plugged in behind the willow have like established, and it's not just the ones you plant. These native plants are dropping seed left and right. So those drop seed and those take root. And so what you've done is you've armored your shoreline like times whatever it was before to where now it's protected. And you don't have to do anything anymore. You know what I mean?
and then if you don't put that in there and you plant those plants, they could just fall in, they wouldn't establish, they could just drop off.
Yes, they
Right?
could. Yes, I mean, you could gamble, right? I mean, you could put them in, but wave action's crazy. And if you're, if you have these plants, I don't know if everybody else, people on TV land can see me right now, but I mean, if this core log isn't there and you just have these plants, buried into this bare soil, it doesn't look like this right now when you plant stuff. For the most part, it's bare. There's no vegetation there. There's, maybe some tree roots hanging out. So there's no protection. And if it gets wavy, I mean, it's gonna hit those plants, and they probably flop out. Geese love to eat them too. But eventually, so what purpose of the willow is, to protect them. If it wasn't there, I'd say your chances are lower. to, for establishment, and they're not expensive. I mean, a lot of people go on the side of the road and call the county, call the highway department. Like, hey, you want these? I'm gonna go chop a few. They'll say, okay.
So for me, I just use buckthorn instead of willow, and it's like removing an invasive, and it does the same thing. Eventually, that just gets filled in with muck and stuff from the lake, and it becomes dirt, and the natives actually grow on it. So that willow wattle or whatever you use, eventually just becomes dirt or plants grow into it. Over time, it takes like 5 years, like you said, but it'll eventually just be land.
Okay, gotcha.
I promise I did not hire this person to stay. Just like they're supposed to. Yes, that does work. This is Tom. Thomas Jens. Thomas, what lake do you live on?
Florence and Ellis.
Yeah, so here's an example of a very established buffer. Same thing, protect the shoreline, capturing nutrients. Here's another picture of a great example of having rock and then having a buffer behind it. And actually, Mark, you comfortable telling us about it?
Yeah, I planted this, maybe, 3 years ago. That's probably a picture from a year ago or so. That's my sauna there.
Oh, that's what that, cute, it looks so cute.
But, yeah, I put the riprap in, and that's just a small piece of my shoreline. But yeah, it's easy to get started, just, I just put in a little piece at a time and just did it all myself.
Looks like you got some nice plants growing in the riprap. Just
Yeah. So, yeah, it's pretty easy. I didn't even hire these guys at
See,
first.
yeah. But so, like we talked about, I'm gonna drill it. But when you go out onto your property, what you might see is, oh, here's a sauna impervious surface. When rain falls, it does not go on the ground. Here's a shed, here's a shed. So what could I do to help collect some of that rainwater that's not going into the ground, rather it's in the shed? So a buffer.
Yeah, so, yeah, I had him come out and he says, yeah, just put a buffer in here, and that's what I did.
And happy day. Thanks, sir.
Nice. So you had those reed things in there first too?
Pardon?
Did you put those reed things in there first?
So willow
No,
wattle,
I
are you
didn't.
talking?
Willow, you didn't do the
No,
willow.
because I had the riprap.
The rock is called riprap,
Yeah.
Yeah, rock, riprap.
sorry.
No, I get that, I say it a lot of time, yeah. Okay, so that's some shoreline restorations. Gotta pick it up here. Okay, another option for protecting, lake water quality are rain gardens. So rain gardens are like retention basins, right? They're shallow dug holes in the ground with native plants. The purpose of these is to capture that runoff before it gets into the lake, let it chill out, settle through the ground. These are typically installed in line with like these flow paths. So here goes again. If you ever go out to your property during a rainstorm and you look around and you say, oh my gosh, you could see that, there's a flow path right here. That would be a great, like somewhere along that line would be an awesome spot to put one of these basins. So rather that water go straight into the lake, it's gonna go like this, and then it's gonna hit this rain garden, settle in the rain garden, hang out, before it goes into the lake. So kind of how there's so many tiers or complexities of rain gardens. You can go really big, real complex. You can also just go really basic. These two up here are an example of basic ones. The landowner did this one on themselves, that one themselves. We contracted this one, and this one was done by Mark, landowner. So just like shoreline restorations, we can help design, we can help get designs, we can help with answering questions, point you in the right direction, permitting, same deal, contractor or DIY. So we did a project on Spectacle Lake. So here's just a kind of a diagram to give you an idea kind of how it works, how rain gardens work. So we had, this is a Cobalt Circle. Do you guys know where Spectacle Lake Beach is? Okay. So before we put these in, this rainwater came off of Cobalt and it would just go straight into the lake. And so what we did is we said, hey, let's capture some of that water and some of that sediment in adjacent rain gardens or bioretention basins, comes down the road. We put in a speed bump that diverted it into these two rain gardens and stopped it from going into the lake. I mean, if it rains like a ton, like it overflows and some of it goes in the lake, but heck of a lot less than before. This is what it looks like. Pretty cool. Bunch of native plants, pollinator habitat. Looks cool. This is what the landowner took out of it. Like after, what was it, 3 years ago when we had like a ton of huge rains before the drought happened. Like we're talking like cubic yards they pulled out of the rain garden. Like this, all this stuff came off the road into the rain garden. They had to shovel it out. Like it was insane. Like we model these rain gardens to be a certain size to capture a certain amount of sediment based on what we think is happening up here. Like that just blew my mind. Where is this all coming? It was crazy. Then I was also like, how the heck is there a Spectacle Lake Beach here? If only after 2 months, this is what's the rain garden, like this whole lake should be filled in. It was crazy. But awesome project, man. If this is what that rain garden's doing, like awesome project. Oh, so this is what I talked about earlier with this. This is on Blue Lake. Here's that driveway. That's just a gravel driveway. Went out there, kind of did my assessment, said, hey man, look at all this water goes like basically right into the water, or rain goes right into the water. This would be an awesome place for a rain garden at the end of that driveway path that went to the lake. And so worked with landowners and this rain garden produced about 5 pounds of phosphorus a year. So yeah, this is a pretty cool project. Blue Lake. Oh, this is Blue Lake, the access. So this is another situation. If I were to go out and be like, oh, look at these two areas where it's eroding, these gullies, there must be some type of flow path that's happening when it rains. This, the rain must be going down here. What can we do? So we installed a rain garden at the top of the hill. So all that water that was coming off the boat access parking lot area went into the rain garden, and we were able to restore that hillside. Yeah.
On this one and the previous one, the rain gardens that you installed?
Yeah.
Did you dig those down and then you plant those grasses in, and you might have to dig it all back out, take it out over time?
Yes, again, all situational. So the Cobalt Circle one, like crazy, like how it didn't think it was gonna be that much sediment. These let's go to this one. This one, I've been out there a few times, not a ton of sediment. And I mean, you might have to, yeah, like after 10 years,
But you actually dug it down a little
yeah,
bit?
yeah, about a foot, all rain
Kind of like a
garden.
retention pond?
Yep.
But a garden?
Yeah, retention pond, a small, stormwater pond, like you see those big stormwater ponds where people build parking lots. That, but scale that down to about, 1/10 its size. You're typically looking at like 100 to 300 square feet, depending on the situation, for your footprint. Yeah, so same thing here. So yeah, not a ton of sediment here. The main concern with this one was stopping this from happening. There wasn't a ton of sediment that was probably coming off that parking lot. But what I was doing is was creating these gullies, which this, that sediment went to the lake. But with putting that basin at the top, we were able to stop that flow path. Okay, so that's rain gardens. Kind of speeding up here, sorry. Any rain garden questions? Do you guys kind of understand, like if you were to go out on your property, like where potentially a rain garden could be placed? Again, you're looking for those flow paths. You're looking for potential gullies on your property. Where one of those rain gardens could be set. And obviously, guy can come out and help you like specifically, but you can at least have an idea of like, oh, a rain garden would work here. Cool, love it. Another best management practice, hillside restorations. So we find these a lot where there's erosion or a lot of hillsides with a lot of shade, sandy soils, where vegetation just can't grow. You can look at potentially using these techniques. So soil wraps, native plants, mulch, blanket. You can see these pictures over here. This was done on Green Lake, very natural stuff. I mean, this is kind of like in the woods. So, over time that will biodegrade, but what it's doing is it's stabilizing that soil again to allow plants to grow. So you're not having that washout and gully. Terraces, right? These terraces along the hillside, what that's doing is when it rains, comes down, it kind of hangs out at that one terrace, takes a while, filters in, maybe if there's too much, it overflows, goes to the next one, but just like slows down that velocity coming off the top of that hillside, just slow things down, let it pool, let it filter. This is another one of my technical assessments. Same thing, hillside erosion right here, right? So what they did was terraced the hillside, put in erosion blanket where needed, put in a bunch of plants. At the top, they planted a buffer to kind of like, again, slow that water down that's coming off of the yard or whatever it's coming off of before it reaches that steep slope. In those terraces, slow things down, allow vegetation to grow and establish.
Now, when you put that native or the erosion blanket down, you put plants inside that, so the plants grow through it?
Yep. So a lot of times what we'll do is, so it depends on the hillside, right? For the most part, we want to get on and disturb it the least amount as possible, which is sometimes really difficult in Isanti County when you have really sandy soils on steep slopes. But the goal is to, you'd want to put down some type of seed, right? Native seed and maybe some cover crop. So cover crop is just seed that grows real quick and grows fast and allows to stabilize to allow other plants to grow. And then you put on the blanket, and then when that blanket, you rip holes in it, and then you buy plugs. And plugs are native plants that have already been grown by a nursery. So you can buy plugs that are already established, and then you plug those in the blanket. Look at that. What's next? Hey, yo. Just gonna say it again. Walk your property. Go look, see where there might be an issue. Look for full pass, look for exposed soil, look at your shoreline, is there something going on underneath? Is there exposed tree roots? And this is where I can help too, but like what kind of vegetation is growing on your on your shoreline? A lot of times it's just, reed canary grass or other non-native vegetation, weeds that just don't have that robust root system that the native plants do. And then, kind of like assess, and I hope tonight you're able to at least, hopefully not be able to design and do a whole project yourself because I'm out of a job, but hopefully you can at least be like, yes, I know what goes here. And then give me a call, I can come out and take a look. And kind of give you some direction. Oh, it's crazy. So this is come out, do designs. We show this, we can give you plant lists. I work with the landowners to see, what kind of colors they like, what kind of flowers they like. We try to space things out so you have, blooming all year long, right? So this one blooms from May to July, May to July, May to July. Then once July hits, then you got your Joe Pye weed and bone set growing, and what's that? Milkweed and butterfly weed. So things are always blooming, always looking nice. And that's kind of how it works. Yes.
There's certain nurseries that carry these plants.
Yes, yep. So Prairie Moon, Minnesota Native Landscape, Prairie Restorations, Dragonfly Gardens is out of Wisconsin. But I like their plants a lot. But yes, so you can go buy these plants, you can put them in yourself.
Yeah, I went to Prairie Restoration. They have a lot of plugs.
Is there, is that list
Six
on, in
plants.
one of these brochures or,
No,
They're pretty
it's not, but I'll send it to you. Did
Oh.
you put your email,
yeah,
emails and stuff? I'll just email you guys stuff.
okay,
For
yeah,
sure.
cause I'd like a copy of that.
Yeah, totally. And so let's just real quick talk about cost share, right? So Soil and Water has funding for shoreline restorations, for near shore water quality projects, all the projects that I talked about, we have funding to assist landowners in doing it. 75% is what we cover. The other 25% is out-of-pocket costs. Depending on what needs to be done. The landowner sometimes takes the role, the DIY. Takes, and that can go towards the cost. I'm not gonna get too complicated with that, but other times, a lot of times, we just hire a contractor. So I'll hire Prairie Restorations to come in and they'll do the whole thing. It's fantastic because they know exactly what's going on, what they need to do, those more complex projects. They just come in and do it, and the landowner pays 25, or the landowner will pay the contractor the full amount, and we right away reimburse them that 75%. And I mean, and just to make it clear, so we use state tax dollars to do these projects, clean water fund dollars, so we have to prioritize. It's important that we're spending the money wisely. So if we get, 10 people that are like, hey, I want to do a shoreline restoration, and other 5 people are like, I want to do rain gardens, and we only have $30,000 to put towards these projects, that's not enough, right? So we have like a ranking system that we use, like kind of what I talked about, like, the vertical height and the amount of erosion, so that we put that money to the places that are, I guess, the most concerning, right? The ones that are putting the most nutrient into the lake, because what we're doing is we're protecting the lake. We're not, fixing, individual shorelines. Our focus is the lake for everybody. So, just keep that in mind. Yes, Dennis?
Could you quickly go over the no-mow method, which is what I did?
But you talking, you go, yeah, heck yeah.
So I'm lazy, and some people like to mow right up to their shoreline. I don't like to mow right up to my shoreline. So you can accomplish the same thing just by not mowing. Don't mow, let it grow for like a year. The next year, it comes back, your grass comes back and the weeds come back. You can buy a product called Grass Out Max. It only kills grass, it doesn't kill anything else. Spray that, kills just the grass. All the native plants are still there. And you can selectively then pick what you want. So like if you don't want this one plant, you remove it. And you just let the ones that you want keep growing. And it kind of accomplishes the same thing. It takes a little bit longer. It's maybe not quite as effective because some of the native plants won't have good root structure. So it might not be quite as effective at first, but you can get a bunch of these plants just natively growing, and a bunch of dogwood trees and stuff will just grow after a year or two, just by not mowing.
Which,
It's a lazy,
How much?
free approach.
how much does that cost?
The Grass Out Max probably cost you like $20,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't use it till year 2. So nothing in year 1, and I'd use that in year 2. And just let nature do its thing.
I mean, and that's so awesome, because what has happened there is Thomas has taken the responsibility himself, done something cheap, and said, instead of saying, hey, Todd, can I grab, $5,000 to do a shoreline restoration? What it's done is now we got that money and we can use it somewhere else, and, making that dollar go farther and to help protect the lake. So that's awesome.
And I've got flowers blooming all year. So I've
Yeah,
got
it's
bees
true.
and hummingbirds all the time.
Like the seed bank in shoreline is unreal. Like that there's dormant seed in there and it just doesn't grow because it's being outmatched by, the other stuff that's growing. But if you could take care of that stuff and let the other stuff just grow, then yeah, pretty cool. Any other?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Does the funding apply to rain gardens as well? The funding support or match?
Yeah, totally. So, any near shore water quality projects. So everything that I talked about, in this scenario, it could be used for, cost share could be used for that. Yep.
What's the definition of near shore? Like, if it's up in the yard, which leads to right to the lake shore, would that be part of it, or does it need to be a certain distance?
It's a good question. So basically anywhere on your property, if you live on a shoreline, we can help, even if you live farther out in the, away from the shoreline, and there's a potential project opportunity, we have money to do that. Like you can.
Okay, thank you.
You could live
Yep.
across the street and plop in a rain garden and be like, sweet, let's do it. Maybe, gotta prioritize.
Yeah.
Yeah, good question, though, thank you.
So you would come out and assess our shoreline and see if it would be something that you would fund.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, just what are, I would put together one of these deals. And just, yeah, see if, I mean, similar to this. Just do a technical assessment, see where things might work. You know, is it a project, is there a resource concern? You know, is there a project opportunity? Can we fund it? We go through all those things. Yep. And if we can't fund it, then I'm there to help with other resources and point you in the right direction. Let you know what you can do on your own, like rain barrels. You know what rain barrels are, they go underneath your downspouts. They don't hold a lot of water, but they're effective. Yeah, I mean, especially have them all the way around your house, they're pretty cool.
Back to the shoreline buffer for a minute, is just a plain old sandy shoreline, does that count, or is that not really helpful?
So like if you have a beach area, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, beach area. On our property, we put a retaining wall and essentially boxed in a beach area, and we keep it clean and just pure sand for our artists in the family who like to make sand castles.
Oh, dude, 100%, totally agree what you're saying. So I would think not so much the sand area is so much of, you know, resource concern. But it's what's behind that retaining or in front of that retaining wall or behind that retaining wall, between the house and the retaining wall or the beach. Cause that's the stuff that's, you know, washing off from up in the watershed that's carrying that nutrient, carrying that sediment. And then once it hits your beach, you know, it's probably, I mean, it's making it into the lakes. Your beach is fine. I mean, it's not, I mean, I guess in terms of things being native, and restored, you know, it's probably not native, but I totally get it. I'd love to have a beach on my property too. It's just what's behind it. Can you capture that runoff coming behind? And I don't know what lake you live on too, but what I've noticed is like if you put in a beach and it wasn't there before, like a lot of times Mother Nature is just like, nah, don't really like that. And after a year, you know, have to bring in more and kind of like that. But does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks. What is your contact information? Is that in this package somewhere, or you're going to email that out?
Gonna put that, it's on here. Right there.
Is that somewhere in the, right, this, or,
It's
or I'll just
definitely
take
in
a,
that
I'll
little
just,
blue brochure.
oh,
wrapped
is
in-
it this
yes,
one?
Sandy, yeah, it's
Okay.
in that, there's like a packet right too. Otherwise, yeah, if you left your email, I'll send a follow-up email with some of the resources.
Otherwise I could just take a picture too.
Is that your personal cell?
Oh yeah, give me a call. I mean, kids might be in the background, I'm not gonna lie, but
You're opening yourself up for.
nah, no, I don't. That's, I mean, just people gotta understand, if it's a Saturday night, we might have a real fun conversation. You know, if I'm picking kids up after daycare, again, might be a little crazy, but yeah, give me a call anytime.
I learned a lot, thank you.
Yeah, heck yeah, well, thank you guys for coming. Any other questions? Rock on. Are you sure? Cause I have like, kids are going down like pretty soon. So if I could stay away for a little bit, then they'll be in bed by the time I get home.
No, don't do that to your wife.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
I have a question.
Yeah,
I live on Paul's Lake on the east side, frontage road, and our 1 acre property was never built it.
Yeah.
We built a house on there 4 years ago.
Yeah.
It's a steep hill going down the lake, and stuff like that. Now, is it? I'll probably have you out, but is it
Yeah.
better? I want to leave it natural.
Mhm.
But I'm worried about erosion.
Yeah.
Does natural do okay? 'Cause it's got like buckthorn in there and all kinds of weird stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I would, if you have good root structure and a lot of plants established, I would say that's probably. It's all situational, right? So if it's a steep hillside, it always freaks me out. Like if you have stuff that's already growing, even if it is buckthorn, which is an invasive,
Better.
and some weeds, it still freaks me out a little bit to like come in, clear it all out. Cause what you probably wanna do to put in natives, like it just exposes that hillside, that sandy hillside you'd really have to put on a lot of blanket. You have to make sure it's seeded really good with that, quick growing cover crop. Probably a ton of already established plants, because native plants, it takes a while for them to get going. So, 2-3 years, it takes those native plants to really start popping. So, I mean, expectations, always important. We do these plants, putting these 1-inch plugs, and people the next year are like, oh man, what's going on? I think they're dying. Like, it's crazy how 1 year, 2 year, 2.5, and then 3 and 4, it's when they go. But yeah, have me out. I think the best option for you would probably be to, address what's going on up here. Whatever's going on here is probably eroding for the most part, because what's going on up here.
Yeah, I'm not,
Yeah.
just moved in and,
Heck, yeah.
I don't want to conserve this and keep this from happening.
Yeah.
So I'll probably have you just come out.
Heck, yeah.
Give me some advice.
Yeah, sounds fun.
So I don't want to take stuff out,
Yeah.
just take down the blanket. I want it to stay.
Yeah, any day above 65 degrees, I'm always welcome to come out.
I hear it.
Sun shining.
And you said it's possible to have a beach and still make that so it's not going in, or
Yeah,
it's
I mean-
not.
No,
Oh,
so, yes, so beaches, right, understandable, like, that's your property, it's fun, kids, totally agree. It's probably not ideal, right?
Oh, it's not
Like-
ideal, but
Oh, no,
okay.
Like, if you're, so
If you bring
my,
in sand, you need a DNR permit too. You can't.
yeah, I
bring
mean,
in
just with
sand.
all the permanent stuff, I mean, just from my point of view, coming from natural resources, I'm biased when I'm saying like, oh, I just plant this whole thing full of native plants, with a huge buffer, but totally understand when people don't want to do that and they want a beach area. What I would recommend then is to behind that beach, as you're walking up,
Then do the,
that's where you have your buffer.
oh,
know,
yeah,
You
okay.
have your buffer there, and then you have your beach.
Yeah, I knew about the DNR bringing that.
And you might want to put rocks in, or it might just erode away and get pulled right into the lake too.
Okay.
How long you been on the job?
Oh, Sandy, 9 years here, worked like 2 years up in Mille Lacs. Soil and water, worked for like a year up in Pope County Soil and Water, or Pope up by Alec. I used to drive from St. Cloud to Alec. This was back when like I graduated and like there were no jobs. And they're like, yeah, you can have this one. Drove a Chevy Blazer. First 2 days of work were gas money, like no joke.
Oh,
Cause I just, yeah, and then finally got working my way down here.
Say, Todd,
Yes.
Todd. Hey, this is Gordon. Could you make sure the Green Lake attendees and or for the video record, knowing that Green Lake also has resources to help the lake owners with their lakeshore restoration, up to 25%?
Cool. Yes. So a lot of our lakes have lake group programs that also help with assisting in, that we partner with, that help assist in doing lakeshore restoration projects or nearshore projects. And if anybody is here from Green Lake, I don't see anyone from Green Lake, right? Am I right or wrong? No one that I know. Gordon, you might be the only one, unless you got some other friends virtual.
Well, if they listen to your recording, they will hear this.
Yes, good idea. Thank you for bringing that up, Gordon. I appreciate it. Cool. All right, well, can we adjourn? Take it.